In Retainers of Anarchy, I wanted to consider if a self-organized, so-called lawless society could be more socially harmonic than maybe a top-down society. The Kowloon walled city informs the work because I wanted to conflate the lawless, self-organized nature of that community with the communities that are present in martial arts fiction. The parallel is these two different lawless spaces, which is the martial arts universe, also known as like Gonwu is the Cantonese term for that space, and then that conflating with the Kowloon walled city, which was a tenement that existed outside of the governmental boundaries of colonial Hong Kong and the auspices of mainland China government. So it existed in a liminal zone. My name's Howie Tsui, and I was born in Hong Kong in 1978. At the time, my family was living in Lagos, actually. So we were kind of bouncing back and forth between Lagos and Hong Kong up till 1984, when my family emigrated to Canada. That period in Hong Kong cultural production in the 1980s was considered a golden era for some in terms of its cantopop music, the films that were being produced and also exported to other markets. And luckily for my family, we were getting shipments of television series and movies sent to our home in Canada, and we would kind of huddle up in the basement and watch these movies and films, and it kind of served as a portal back home to Hong Kong. The landscape environment is based off of a very famous historical work called 100 Horses by Chinese court painter Giuseppe Castiglione. I was attracted to his work because it was a kind of a hybrid style and that it had kind of Chinese compositional structure, but the rendering was very kind of Italian Renaissance. I thought that kind of hybridity was a good way to like also recall, I guess, my identity or Hong Kong. So it was intentional that I structured the landscape to reference that work, and then I plop the Kowloon walled city like right into that space, like a spaceship. The Noodle guy is the first animation that we produced, and I guess it could be considered maybe a self-portrait. There's a figure slurping noodles in front of a TV. It's also the seed animation of the entire work because it's perhaps me watching the Kung Fu shows, and then everything kind of springs forth from that one scene. The bar fight has a figure emerging out of this inky portal and slides across a bar table and smashes his head on a vase. And it's a reference to Jackie Chan's Project A, when there's an epic bar fight between Hong Kong police and Hong Kong sailors. In one room, there's a figure in kind of a covert night ninja suit kneading noodle dough using a long bamboo stick. And that practice is a regional noodle dish called zuk sing min in Hong Kong, where you use bamboo to knead the dough and build up the gluten to get a nice chewy noodle. I wanted to elevate these kind of artisanal crafts or artisanal traditions and acts of labor, and I wanted those artisans to be elevated into becoming heroes, like martial arts heroes. Like this is like a kung fu skill. I'm interested in texture and toothiness and the sign of the hand, the mark of the hand. I think it was intentional, both because my interest also in faking historic or ancient artwork. I'm trying to counter a certain homogeneous sheen that is prevalent in a lot of media art. I kind of wanted to keep it much more kind of intimate with hand drawing all the elements. In my practice, there's an interest in non-linear and hyper narratives. I also have an interest in surrealism and unconscious thought. That's why we gave agency to the computer to make decisions as to where the camera's going to shift, where it's going to zoom into, where it's going to zoom out from. So it's all kind of functions almost on a game mechanics system where the computer rolls a dice. The only thing that is consistent about the work is that every 15 minutes an airplane flies by really loud and kind of snaps the viewer out of their trance. I would say a lot of my initial influences and my interest in pursuing art was in a way inspired by a lot of the visual culture that I kind of absorbed as a child in these formative years. A lot of people in the Hong Kong diaspora has a longing feeling for that place and the culture of the city. Our decision to leave Hong Kong was a difficult one, and there's a lot of kind of exiles and people that maybe immigrated not of their own choosing or due to certain conditions or forces. So I think that's why we were consuming it, because maybe there was a longing to return or a longing to be there.